Hello, this is Greg Allison with Green Greg, Galactic Gregs, excuse me, coming to you on the 26th day of May, 2021. And I've got a special guest with us today, Tim Pickens. I hope I'm not talking too loud here. Tim,
yes, sir.
What's worked for me in something called the HALO program and High Altitude Research Program. He was a co-founder of the High Altitude Research Corporation. Tim has been a lead rocket developer, lead rocket engineer from way back. We started this stuff in '94, and he had already been doing some rocket stuff prior to that. And oh yeah, by the way, Tim, I brought a special little guest. I thought maybe you might recognize my friend here.
Oh yeah, SL2.
No, this is the Hart.
Oh, that's the spare motor. That's right, for the Cat's Prize.
This is the test motor for the Hart Cat's Prize rocket.
Cat's Prize, that's right. Sorry.
This is the daddy of the SpaceShipOne rocket. You see, if you can see it, it's just been burnt. So how many people start a YouTube video with a motor that they burnt? we fired this one a little, it's got some spider webs in it. It's been on my back porch, but we fired this one about less than a mile from my house on a grass airstrip for a place called Big Sky, if you recall. So that was the daddy of the SpaceShipOne motor, which is the daddy of the SpaceShipTwo motor, I take it.
Well, there's certainly a lot that's definitely used there.
Yeah, it's definitely used that, but we didn't fire and burn the whole grain out. Do you remember why we didn't burn the whole thing out?
Well, it's probably because we probably had I don't know if it was from instabilities and we shut it down. I really don't remember, even though
I'll share the data curve here in a second.
Cool.
Hang on, I'll share the data curve in a second. That was a pretty good looking curve, actually. I'm gonna do a share, but I got to bring it up here. Give me a second.
Okay.
Share screen. Ding, 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 ding. Ding, ding, ding. That's it right there, firing. And in fact, the data curve, this is the motor I just showed everybody. And it's on a trailer with sandbags on it in a grass airstrip close to my house here. Most of our motor firings were done on Tim Pickens' dad's place up in Gurley. This is the data curve. It had a real good data curve, Tim. Remember that?
Yeah, it's been a while. I didn't review any of this today, but yeah.
Well, this is a pressure fed.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Pressure fed nitrous oxide oxidizer, HTPB, hydroxyl terminated polybutadiene fuel grain, with as you can see, the blue curve is the thrust. Actually, is what it says here. You got to have, yeah, the pressure in the tank's got to exceed the pressure in the motor chamber. So here's the pressure in the motor chamber, and here's the tank pressure. It didn't drop a whole lot over that fire, and that's kind of interesting. Well, I don't know what this W tank line was. I don't remember that one.
No, we didn't use it.
Oh, so that was just unused. Okay, that's why it's below zero. So we got about 1,300 pounds of thrust there. It looks like down to over 1,000 pounds, or right at 1,000 pounds at the end. And so this thing, we just burned it for a few seconds here. But you know, that was just, you know, we did how many motor firings did we do? Over 300, right?
Yeah, that's on all the programs we did. Yeah, some days we had as many as 10, 12 test firings out at the farm. Yeah,
that was the avionics for this thing. Just show everybody what this rocket looked like when I probably got to go the other direction to find out what it looked like.
You know, you might want to tell people what the Cat's Prize was. What is it we were trying to do here?
This was the Cheap Access to Space Prize. It was sponsored by the Space Frontier Foundation. David Anderman came up with a concept for this prize, trying to goad people to really doing something. We were already launching stuff with our HALO program. We'd started a company called High Altitude Research Corporation, and this was intended to be it was actually a balloon-launched rocket. This is a air-launched hybrid rocket, which is what Virgin Galactic uses. And I could talk through these avionics. Go back and see the video I did with Bill Brown just a couple of days ago. We talked about some of the electronics and balloon stuff. There's your rocket on the deck of the boat being assembled. This is a Mr. Offshore that ran out of Pensacola. It served their naval intercoastal system stations where they did mine research and work. You can see the motor, the motor and the oxidizer tank are carbon fiber wound, and they're together there. And this had a single bulkhead between the oxidizer tank and the engine, which I just showed you, which Burt Rutan later claimed as the single greatest invention. Of course, this was years before Burt thought of this stuff. And there's our carbon mat fins. Well, he sold Paul Allen the investment money on that basis of that invention. And you've worked for Paul Allen, you've worked for Burt. Here it is on the deck, on the back of the deck of the Mr. Offshore, getting ready to be hoisted into the air, into the atmosphere by a balloon. And that is what we did.
Yep. And that was a common bulkhead design, just like was used on SpaceShipOne. So
hang on, let me stop this share where you can show that.
Okay, got this.
Play the hybrid rocket, Tim. There you are. You got the diagram. Tell everybody what a hybrid rocket is.
Hybrid rocket means it's hybrid because it's both a solid rocket and it's a liquid rocket, because we have a liquid oxidizer, and the fuel is just like a lot of solid rockets, except we don't mix oxidizer with it most of the time. So basically that's a valve between the blue ball and the cylinder, and that's what controls the on and off. And there's no throttling with this particular design. But that's it. This is what was patented. So, you know, it's very surprising because this is exactly what we were doing in our rocket club. No different.
We started that in 1994. We built our first hybrid rocket like that in 1994.
That's right.
So what year did Burt patent his great invention?
I think it came rolling in probably, we could look it up, but it was definitely when this book was being written, because I got a call from Burt who said, you know, I've got the patent on that engine. And this guy was writing this book, Michael Belfier, about both of us. And in fact, there's my hybrid rocket bike. So the point is, it's funny because they were really wanting to get the story straight of where did this technology come from. And so I told Burt, I said, well, I'm amazed you got a patent, because this is previous existing technology, and I don't think we could even claim it at the altitude research. I don't know, maybe. But I said, so what I told him is, I said, well, you've got your story. This is what we come up with at Tellini's here in Huntsville, eating together. This configuration, I drew it up, and he was real excited, and he said, that's it, this is going to be a breakthrough. So I went home and talking about how important of a meeting it was, didn't think much about it. And then a few years later, I get the book call and says, you know, we got to get this right. And I said, well, I agree to disagree. That was I invited you to eat, and I carried us. And you fact is, that was you were excited about our napkin design, but concept. But the fact is, he's like, well, you know, that's mine, you know. And I'm like, well, why don't we let the history get it? Let's get it right while we're fresh. It's in my notes. And I said, let's let the revisionists kind of correct the story after we're gone. So it's like both versions of this are carried in this book.
That's funny. Well, you know darn well we actually publicized that design feature as a feature of our rocket, and a lot of our literature and press releases that we put out quite a few years before Burt ever dreamed of doing a rocket. So I think history would side with us if we pushed a point. Hey, by the way, your brother's in the room, Barry.
Right. Who's that, Barry or Randy?
Barry's in the room.
Right. Hello, Barry.
Barry has was part of our operations way back when. He really helped us out with some of this stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, one thing we're going to have to do here is we're going to before we rip Virgin Galactic to shreds, we ought to at least give them kudos for this great mission they just accomplished. They actually put a couple of guys up above the Van Karman line here a couple of days ago. And the VSS, what was the name of that one? Unity. So they did their launch. It was the first launch from Spaceport America in New Mexico. So they finally made New Mexico a space launch site. And a lot of people trivialize that and saying, well, it's just the Von Karman line. It's not orbit. But look how long it's took them to get there. space is very hard. It's difficult. There's nothing easy about it. We know that from our lifetime experiences that it's a tough business. It's a tough road. It's very risky. And, right after Burt Rutan won the X Prize, a lot of people had the expectation that they would be flying. I mean, a lot of people, tourists, within a year. And I was at a conference, and one of the guys got up and said that, and I looked at him, and I said, no, you're not. You ain't going to do it that fast. I said, this is way more complex than you think. They all got mad at me. I mean, they were spitting fire, stomping, pawing, wanting to gouge my eyeballs, mad at me. Now, how many years ago was that?
A long time. 2004 is when all the excitement was out there. And
I know, it was 15 years ago.
yeah, it's like government.
They still haven't done it, you know?
Yeah, it was definitely, that was an experimental program. Let's face it. And you couldn't buy a ride on that, no matter who you were. Even Paul Allen couldn't. And so it was a technology demonstrator, and that's all its purpose was, to show that this could be done affordably. So, it did what it's supposed to do, and it didn't always do it well. There's a lot of hiccups that happened on the program, and that's sort of the backstory here. We even lost our own friends during the development of SpaceShipTwo. The engine, we weren't that involved. I wasn't that involved. I was involved at all at that point. It was a little later that I did consultant for Virgin Galactic and Virgin Orbit a little bit. So yeah, this is really hard, and it's the order of magnitude at least more than suborbital, no doubt. That's just from a velocity standpoint. Let's just, but this was new technology. Hybrids have never flown people to space. In fact, not sure that they've really contributed to any orbital insertions that I know of. It's possible, but
we had business plans for, I had a business plan where we planned actually a couple different concepts for using these. We had an 8,000 pound booster that we thought could put 100 pounds into an equatorial low Earth orbit for about $1 million. That was what we were shooting at. And we thought we'd make money on that, but they had a potential customer. He says, "Oh, we want it in sun synchronous." So we went back and revamped the whole thing and found that the balloon manufacturer could probably get a 16,000 pound payload. 8,000 was our maximum prior to that. So we goosed it and spent another year working it. But in the meantime, the satellite market went belly up. And even though we were aiming at a completely different niche, nobody would talk to us. I mean, we had, I had some prospective investors at that point. But, it's just all that, just kind of threw a lot of water in my fire. What a lot of people don't realize is we had day jobs, at least a lot of us did. And we were doing this stuff on the side, developing avionics to defeat the COCOM limits, building rockets, doing launches every 18 months at maximum. We did 2 launches 4 months apart. The BLRV and SL2, I believe, were just 4 months apart. And we were under a lot of pressure, and we were out in the shops working midnight, and I was up, at the time I was sleeping about 2 hours a night, just trying to get all the paperwork together. We had to go to the FCC, the FAA, work with Eglin. I was developing business plans and, schedules, looking at finances, how to keep the money going. And, just the constant decisions we had to make. It was a busy, tough thing to pull out all together. And, it had to burn out a firehouse, what we were doing. What do you think?
And a lot of the industry, commercial space industry back in those days was being sort of promoted because of the Iridium satellite potential. This is way pre Elon. So
yeah, that Iridium is what knocked us out. When that thing went belly up, nobody wanted to talk space or satellites. Their eyes glazed over. And that's when we were ready to go. I just had that new business plan all looking sharp, and nobody talked to us. Before that, I had people talking to us. But then it was like, nope, forget it. That's word space dirty. And so it was a tough time to try to hit the market. And so, we all kind of broke up at that point and went different ways and did different things. But we've had some adventures, right?
Yeah, we've got, well, our team had an amazing experience doing high altitude launches of hybrid rockets, which include ignition and launches and recoveries, telemetry, all that stuff. And a lot of people, when they think about the Rutan hybrid, they think, wow, that, that was the CAC, that was space dev. The fact is, we developed the tank in-house with Thicol's help, the nitrous tank. We also developed the motor cases and the nozzles and the whole 9 yards, all composite. First time Scaled had ever done anything like this. So we did all that, and we did compete the fuel grains and the injectors. And Scaled was not happy with any of the vendors or the proposals, actually. And there was a meeting one day with me and Burt and Doug Shane and a few others. I think maybe Pat Storch, but we were sitting there, and they were very angry with the options because, frankly, they just didn't think they were going to have a good team. So Doug Shane leans back in his chair and he says, I got an idea. He said, let's fire Tim Pickens, send him back to Huntsville, build us a motor, and let's not be in the power plant business. We always buy them. Let's get out of this because this is a pain working with these rocket jerks. Rutan, he just didn't care for the arrogant rocket guys. So
Yeah, that's what we did.
at the last minute, and people don't realize this, but they said, okay, Tim, get with your buddies in Huntsville and who'd be working that. And we're going to hold off on making the announcement of who's building rocket motors or pouring grains and all that. And by the way, we did all the testing at Scaled too. We didn't rely on any of those guys to do building the big hardware or doing the testing. We did all that. So he said, so get with your buddies. We'll give you 2 weeks. I think it was, wasn't it, Greg? You got 2 weeks to put a proposal together. So everybody's sort of, I'm on the other side of the fence at Scaled, and they're saying, what's taking so long? Well, we're looking at something else. So Greg's back in Huntsville pulling the Steve Mistakis is in, the guru of hybrids for us. And
now Steve and I wrote the proposal. It was Steve and I with your help. It was mainly Steve and I. So we wrote a proposal. We had a good proposal. Burt calls me up finally one day and he said, now I know already that the whole reason this got started was they said they were wanting to send you home to do this. But then Burt got some kind of wild hair up his yin yang. He calls me up and he says, Greg, I like your proposal. He said, it's the best one we got. He said, but I just got one problem. I said, what's that, Burt? And he says, you ain't got anybody working on it. I said, yeah, I'm going to work on it. And so is Steve and Tim Pickens. He said, we don't have anybody full time. I said, we're going to hire Tim Pickens. And he says, oh, no, you can't have Tim Pickens. No way. I ain't going to let Tim Pickens go. You can't have Tim Pickens. And I go, what the heck? And that's what all this was about.
Well, his idea, though, that was Doug Shane. It was an exercise. Oh, and here's the kicker.
Let me finish this part. So he said, you can't have Tim Pickens. Well, I didn't want to get you fired. It's like, well, what is this all about? It threw me for a loop. I thought he was in on that. So I didn't want to get you fired. So, he come back and says, I tell you what, he says, if you or Steve Mistakis to quit your day jobs, I'll give you the contract. Well, I just started a job at Teledyne Brown. I'd been unemployed for 4 months and just barely missed losing my house. And suddenly the thought I was going to quit my day job to take a stint that's going to last a few weeks for motor firing, it was kind of nuts. And Steve just became a manager at Thical. And I know darn well, I knew darn well if I went to Steve and asked him, he'd just laughed in my face. And was like, yeah, this ain't going to fly. I said, and I just told Burt, I said, Burt, on that basis, I guess we'll just have to go separate ways because, I can't quit my day job and Steve Mistakis. I know better than even asking him. So
interesting. Well, yeah. I came back in. This is before you probably knew about it. They asked me to leave the evaluation, and we had the 4 companies, and one of them was HMX, which is Gary Hudson's company. They had a really good proposal too. Same kind of reason they didn't get it is what you just described. What are your other programs? What's going to pay the bills when we are slowed down for some reason? So,
but we always survived that way, though. We've been doing rockets and stuff for years, and because we could do it on the side, we could survive it. And I've always hired a few people full time. I had you working for me full time when I had a day job working somewhere else. We had 2 or 3 other people working full time on the Cat's Prize and on the LRV.
You're right. Well, in a nutshell, we looked at the technical review of everyone, and Hark won this hands down, technically, by the way. I mean, hands down.
Well, we developed the technology. We should have.
Right.
We knew this stuff. Nobody else knew it, including Space Dev, who blew their motors out because they thought it worked like a LOX hybrid. It didn't. They bought patents from Amrock. They didn't know how that stuff worked. What did they do? Their motor? They blew up a motor on a pad, didn't they? Burn one out.
Well, the first test was pretty ugly, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But anyways, but when they brought me back into their meeting, they said, we made a decision. We're going with the AC and Space Dev. And I'm like, what? What are you? This is crazy. We've got this technically slam dunk. Well, we decided to put a weight on the system, and the technical was a weight of maybe 60%. No, it wasn't even that. It was less than.
It had to be less.
I wish I had it with me, but I don't. It's on a computer somewhere. But anyway, the weighted system got us, because the real reason they went with these guys is, well, they do have other contracts, and they have the means. They've got basically deep pockets, by the way, because with Jim Benson, it was he had investment and whatnot, and certainly Corey Klein and EAC. Those guys had Kevin Smith behind him, and he certainly did well with his.
I probably could have went to Shaddis and got some money on that kind of a basis, but we didn't know where he was coming with that.
Well, I'll tell you, that really knocked the wind out of me for being on that program, because in my offer it said, to go out here and handle RCS, the motor cases, and the test stand, and the trailer for nitrous, and then they said, and possibly lead 100% in-house effort. That's what my offer letter said. So that's what I want to do. Get back to Huntsville, give them my network of people that know how to do stuff. You can't recruit people out in Mojave. The only way you do it is if you find hardcore enthusiasts like Rutan attracts for airplanes. But those aren't the guys we need. We need some rocket guys. Where's the Rocket City? We know where that is, don't we?
Yeah, right. Well, one of the things that blew my mind is we all know there was an accident at Mojave Airport that killed 3 people.
Right.
One of them was one of our guys that worked for us, a good friend, enthusiast, hard worker. He did a lot of his own rockets beforehand, Glenn May. And when we were at Glenn May's funeral, and one of the guys from Scaled Composites got up, he's talking about how excited they were when Glenn May came back to the company, because he says, finally, we got a rocket scientist. And I'm going, well, Glenn was a good rocket technician, built stuff, real sharp guy, but he wasn't an engineer.
Right.
And didn't have any engineers. So here they are developing a program of rockets, and they don't have any rocket engineers in-house at that point in time. And it blew my mind when he said that. I could have fell on the floor. It's like, you got to be kidding me. What are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? So I lost a lot of confidence in him when that happened. And there's some other things that cost me a lot of confidence too.
Well, what got me about that incident, and Glenn was my roommate in Mojave.
Oh yeah.
He was my first hire. It was his first aerospace job ever.
And he was a good friend to you, me, Absolutely. And our whole team. He's one of us. He's on our team.
Yeah, we built rocket bikes together, rocket anything. He would come and test his stuff on our test days. He was hardcore, man. Boy wanted to go to space.
He had a rocket-powered canoe too.
Oh yeah, that's right. That thing was crazy. And a go-kart. He rode a go-kart out of Mojave after I left. Man, I bet he was doing 80 miles an hour down one of those dirt roads out there. But the odd thing about that whole incident, I got a call from Burt on his way back to Mojave when he heard about the accident. He was down in LA or Palm Springs, I think it was. He said, "Hey, Tim, this is Burt. We've had an Apollo fire and we've lost Glenn, and we've got another guy struggling." And he said, "Stay off your rocket powered bikes and everything. Stay away from nitrous. we're going to find out what's going on. Keep your daughter off the rocket bikes, by the way. So, I mean, she wasn't ever on a nitrous bike anyways. That was CO2.
Compressed air.
But he said that, and I'm like, okay. And he said, whatever we find, we're going to share with you. We're going to find out what happened, and we're going to give you whatever guidelines we generate. Okay. So when I went to the funeral, I saw several of the Scaled guys there that I knew, and obviously Burt and his management team. And I'm like, wow, how many people were at this accident, out there, boots on the ground? And they're like, well, there was, a few of us, 8 or 10. And I couldn't help but think, well, wow, why don't you guys have any injuries, So that was a little vexing. And I'm working Orion Propulsion, so I don't really have time. He didn't want me to dig into any of this because he said, we got this, your personal connection there. We just really, we'll handle it, Tim. We'll get back with you. I did get a letter a year and a half or so later from Doug Shane that talked about the do's and don'ts working with this oxidizer. So, but I remember at the funeral, Glenn's mother come up to me and she said, Tim, and I knew her from going to see her with Glenn when he came home at least once.
Glenn's dad was a good buddy to one of my NASA leads, actually.
Wow. Well, that is a small world because he's in Collierville, which is at least about 3 hours from here, I think.
That's where Leonard Metz was from, and he was one of my NASA leads. He knew him well.
But imagine Glenn's mom coming up to you and saying, hey, Tim, were they taking care of my son? Were they being safe? And I said, well, I suspect, based on what I'm hearing, I probably would have done the same thing, in terms of being there, whatever was going on, what they felt comfortable with. And she says, well, they're offering to pay all the expenses of the funeral and pay a little money. And I don't think it was much. I don't want to be quoted but it seemed to me it was 30,000. It might've been a little more, but and I didn't think much about it, but, as far as processing, but I said, well, I think it could have happened to any of us based on what I was hearing. Right. And I thought, wow, and then a few years ago, I ran across a good friend of mine who was on the program as a consultant. And he said, he's not working in the industry anymore. He went after the accident and he was there with boots on the ground. I think he helped try to help Glenn out after the injuries. He said that he changed careers. He went to the oil field industry and really wanted to get away from rockets. He was very, it's shell shock. And I sort of asked, I said, well, how we got guys that are uninjured, and we've got now 3 guys who lost their lives. And he said, well, the guys, the guys wanted to walk out and watch the cold flow test. There was no energetics out there as far as igniters. There was no motor case, no rubber, none of that stuff. He said, and they were too close and it went off. And apparently everyone else was sort of protected in the control room. So, of course, I'm disturbed, especially when I look back 10 days later, Scaled Composites closed on a sale to Northrop Grumman 10 days later after that accident. And so I kind of think, well, a lot of that calmness, and everybody sort of knew the folks that would probably benefit from that were there. So it's been sort of unsettling, if that makes sense, this whole situation. And I thought, man, should I bring this up to Glenn's mother at all? I mean, it's way past, but still, and a couple of people said, well, you might want to let the past be the past. But at the same time, man, it's like that. I hired Glenn. Mm-hmm. I got him his second job after he wanted to go get away from SpaceShipTwo. I got him a job with Gary Hudson. He worked air launch. He really enjoyed that. And that work kind of ran out. and they offered him a better job 1 month before the test firing.
Wow.
So that's how that went down. Glenn was excited to be going back because he didn't have to do a lot of the heavy work that it takes to get a new test stand. It's an 80,000 pound thrust motor, so it's a whopper. So that's sort of what's been going on behind the scenes, and it's just, it's tough to know what to do in situations like that. I don't have anything to benefit other than this, the truth coming out. I don't know.
Yeah, I hear you. So it was heartbreaking losing Glenn like that. He was always such an enthusiast and so full of energy, and it was hard to believe. It was real shocking. But Tim, here's the thing. I don't know if you remember it, but the thing that was most incriminating to me was this. You, I, and Burt Rutan, and a few other people, just a handful, were recipients of an email about, it was a document, an Air Force document out of Sandia National Laboratories, if I recall correctly, about nitrous going supercritical and blowing tanks up and stuff like that. And it listed potential causes for that, including heat. And so they're out in the desert, in the heat of the desert, doing a cold flow test in the Mojave Desert with multi-million dollar airplanes all around them, and letting people walk around this cold flow test. Scaled Composites didn't believe in metals. They thought composites would do everything, except composites aren't necessarily your best way to conduct static charge away, because static charge likes to build up on composites. So you got a flowing liquid through this, through the plumbing, which builds up static electricity. So you got heat, you got static electricity, you got an oxidizer in the nitrous oxide. It's not as powerful as LOX. You and I both know that LOX will detonate under pressure, even a tiny little particle in a fuel line. So if you're dealing with LOX, you got to be real fastidious about cleaning it out, your fuel lines with track or whatever. So you told me they didn't do that. So they could have had some contaminants, some dust blown in from the desert. You know how the deserts are dusty and so forth. So there might have been some contaminants there. So they might have had fuel, oxidizer, they had the heat, you had static electricity built. You can come up with any number of probable root causes for that accident. I think, other people have come up with others. And I think they blame it on something entirely different. But I don't have a lot of faith and confidence. And I really think that they were trying to take the blame off their backs, because honestly, I think it was the static charge and the heat that combined to cause that accident. And they should have known better, because Burt had the report and he didn't study it. Nobody else apparently studied that report.
Well,
was, to me, that was a very incriminating thing.
Well, there was some other factors that, if Scaled put a report out for me of do's and don'ts, you got to
tell me there was something to share with you. What did they share?
Oh, it basically talked about materials and thermal decomposition. It talked about, it really didn't go deep. It didn't talk about the accident. It just talked about, don't use silicon O-rings anymore, that sort of stuff. But SpaceShipOne was the first composite tank, wireless tank for nitrous that I know of, other than even the stuff we did. We had aluminum liners, by the way.
Oh yeah, we sure did. We had aluminum liners and everything.
It's because that epoxy, there's not enough information about it, and those volatiles will lower the activation energy of nitrous, make it really easy to decompose.
It's a fuel too. It's a fuel.
Yeah, exactly. They had a polymer liner. Well, you're right. I mean, they had a polymer liner on SpaceShipOne built by Thicol, ATK. And after a few tests, we saw the permeable liner had the nitrous permeated it and it blistered. Basically, nitrous got pushed through the membrane to the carbon fiber and the epoxy system. And then when you would basically do a test to blow down back to ambient, it would want to come out of those bubbles. So it's trapped in bubbles. So they would burst. So we had multiple bursted bubbles of the liner, and that they actually flew the guys to space with a tank that really didn't have a liner, had remnants of it. So it was sort of that kind of stuff, you know. We were pushing the edge, and we didn't have, but let's say we had the flight tank, we had the test stand tank, and we had a spare. And then we had one more that was the burst tank, and you know, even that we didn't know the burst pressure was going to be maybe a factor 2.5 of operating, and so they put their flange on there, and the bolts, titanium bolts, are expensive. So I think the engineer working that, he bought some off eBay, I think it was, and well, they had fatigue, didn't know it, so that thing failed with the bolts. So we popped the cap, and the tank got damaged. So it still went to high pressure. But the point is, stuff like that just sort of, it's interesting to watch the things that we'll take chances on and won't.
Well, I tell you, the guys that flew those first missions that won the X Prize were probably just really lucky. But that's the thing about hazards; they don't always materialize, and you know, it's like they happen when all the holes in the Swiss cheese line up. Usually, it's usually when more than one thing goes wrong and they add together. That's kind of why I'm thinking happened out there, that Mojave incident.
Well, and
unless an operator does something stupid like pulls a feathercock while you're in ascent phase. So I don't know how that happened. Maybe he was feeling too much acceleration, and maybe he just wanted to grab a hold of something. I don't know how that happened.
They had a chunk of rubber come out, a big chunk on Mike Mebel's flight, and it was a big chunk. So basically, it squeezed through the nozzle, extruded it out. Mike said on, I think it was Jay Leno, him and Burt were on there. He said it felt like a hammer, a sledgehammer hitting him in the back.
Oh yeah. So he's lucky the engine didn't blow then.
Well, in fact, it's funny because EAC was doing a single port fuel grain. Space Dev was doing a 4-port.
That's those multiple ports.
And the multi-ports are the challenge a lot of times. So Space Dev, EAC was out in the desert, and those guys were sending me pictures of chunks of fuel that clearly were held in by some sort of ISO grid. And they're saying, hey, this is not cool. Our competition is losing its fuel grain. The reason they ended up getting to fly the guys to space is because the single port engine design had to be a lot longer to get the fuel in there. And that meant the center of gravity of the glider got pushed back. So they didn't get pulled off the program or win the competition because it was bad performance. It's very good performance, ISP for you rocket guys. But it's because that center of gravity. And you say, well, what does that have to do? You're going to burn it out. Well, if you have a hiccup and you have to glide home you can dump your nitrous. We had a requirement for dumping nitrous. I think it was 2 minutes is what we sized it for. But
how were you dumping it? Straight through the motor chamber, or what?
We dump it out the front of the tank. We had a T configuration. So we balanced the forces. So it was like a T. So I'm saying all that because it would have been very aft heavy as a glider with the EAC motor, but it was much more simplistic. So I was
that ballast or something for that, because when they got this ISO matrix in the center, all that that's just something that can stop the nozzle up. And the difference between a jet is like a tube with 2 ends open. With a rocket, you close one end, and a bomb, you close both ends. Well, when that chunk of fuel blows through that nozzle, you close both ends. You turn a rocket motor into a bomb. Fortunately, it got through quick enough that it didn't go kablooey. But if it been a little bit more, it could have. If it had been a bigger chunk, took a little longer, it might not have been a pretty picture. Melville might never have made it to Jay Leno.
Well, you know, when I left there as a consultant. People don't realize, but I was starting to do designs preliminary for Rutan since 2000. We met in 1999 in Huntsville. And
Right.
we started a dialogue. In fact, I got pictures that first meeting with me and him.
I
But
remember y'all
we
met.
didn't have a meeting. We just met at an event.
Oh, okay. Then
So
you went and met and had dinner with him and you drew it all out on a napkin.
yes, that was later. And so the point is, I was far more than a manager. There's one book that recently was published, and I was very disappointed. It's this. This book was written by a pilot, Brian Benny. And did I know Brian? Yeah, I knew him, but I never worked with him to my knowledge. But that book, he says, Tim Pickens worked here. He was a manager. And I'm like, I didn't manage anyone other than the herding the cats on the hybrid a little bit. But so he and I didn't work together. He doesn't really know what I did. He doesn't know that I was working for free and Steve Mistakis was and Gary Hudson. There was a lot of us that played, tried to help Burt figure this out before we ever got paid. I even tested some rocket motors, hybrid rocket motors with nozzles that we built at Plasma Processes. It was something I proposed to Burt for a low erosion nozzle. I mean, I was very, very into the technical of this program. So don't let books that no one does correction. In other words, they don't ask you, what did you do, Pickens? You know, this book here is another book I'm in, and they were good to me, but I never talked to them. I didn't know this book existed. Of course, the Rocketeers, and there's another one called How to Make a Spaceship. This is one I'm in too, talking about a little bit about my roles. I don't know these people, by the way. The only person I really got to meet is Michael Belfiore. So people write stuff and they don't get it right because they're not really good journalists.
It happens all the time.
Makes me
And
nuts.
reporters the same way that do articles. Most articles, if you know anything about them, they're hack jobs. Anytime I really know something about the subject matter in an article and I look at the writing of the article, it's like, really? This is garbage. And then we had those guys that went out with us on the boat and they really just made a fiction story about everything we did, including, really fictionalized it. They had background stuff, had nothing to do with who we were and where we were from, had me, moving my mom in North Carolina, just stuff they made up out thin air. It never happened. It's like, really?
Right. I hate it.
Goofy stuff.
They're doing their history revisionist before we're dead. This guy got it right. Michael Belfiore was a great guy, and he really kept both versions of the story. He wasn't the judge. He didn't conclude, but it was good. I like the book. So, so there is after the Glenn accident, I was asked to later, after the report was not out, it wasn't public, they asked me to come look at their hybrid programs. And by the way, the Scaled had a very competent, really good engineer developing that hybrid out there. He had his own version of it. It was a nylon based fuel, and it had the highest ISP of probably anything we've tested, or they tested. I've never tested nylon, but it was real good. And it had
nylon in the nozzles on the space shuttle main engine. On the space shuttle solid rocket boosters, which are now the Artemis 1 or SLS rocket boosters. Nylon is what we use is the ablative in the nozzles of the solid rocket motors.
Well, that would be silica phenolic or carbon phenolic.
Well, no, that's on the inside of the motor itself. No, there's actually nylon in the
there might be some of that in there, but the nozzle insert is usually like a 3D.
Not the insert, the extension.
I see.
Not the insert, no.
Well, it was great fuel, but there's not much compliance with nylon. So if you want to bond the fuel grain to the case, the motor case, which is like a pressure vessel, it's really hard to do. It takes a lot of engineering. It's got to go 100% right. So traditionally, we pour the fuel grains into the cases. So people don't realize, but at one point I got a call from them and said, "Hey, we've got 3 hybrid programs going for SpaceShipTwo."
We know a little bit about pouring fuel into a case. This is the Hart Catch Prize rocket motor, which is the daddy of the SpaceShipOne motor.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that was HTPB and a little bit of wiffle dust.
that's right, HTPB.
You know, Steve Mustakas designed that fuel grain right there.
Yeah.
He's a, he's a good engineer. But so did you realize at one time there were 3 hybrid programs? The guy that was managing them at Virgin, he was a consultant, he decided he had the right answer to combustion instabilities. So he couldn't grade everybody's paper and go do his own engine. So they said, "Tim, we'd like you to oversee some of this." And then I went to visit X Squadron with another guy. So at one point we had like 5 hybrid rocket programs going out there. And
Virgin Galactic.
Virgin, yeah. And I was just a consultant, so I wasn't there very much. But it was really interesting how hard it is to develop a large motor like this, because nobody's ever done it. With nitrous oxide there. I think even Amrock's largest hybrid nitrous motor, I think it was around 10,000 pounds of thrust.
I thought they did all locks.
They did, and there is a paper out there on nitrous, I believe.
They did one.
Yeah, they did. And, they had combustion instabilities out the wazoo with the locks. And by accident, the pyrophoric liquid to light the motor, the valve stuck. So it was feeding T-tab into the combustion injector area, and it made it run smooth as silk. And that was an accident that they were able to fix those instabilities. It was a big deal. It was a big breakthrough.
Wow.
Yeah. Amazing how many accidents, how we fall into solutions.
That's why it's important to really do real honest to God tests with the hardware and don't do simulations all the time, because you'll never get that out of a simulation. And I don't know how many times I've been at NASA and guys were basing everything and banking on simulations. It's like, really? You're full of it. You need to go out and build something, test something, because our experience is we have design out the yin yang. Design looked good, but when you went out to make it work, you'd find that none of it worked. You had zillions of problems, and it's the same way with developing electronic systems. Everything will look good on paper. When you start putting it all together, it all goes yin 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 yang, and you got to really goose it a lot to get it working. Yeah. It's been the same thing through my professional jobs, and like I said, I used to do test program sets to isolate failures in tank line replaceable units, F-15 and stuff like that. That's one of the things I've done when I wasn't doing space stuff. Most of my career has been space, but I did do that stuff some, and did a little commercial parts washing job there for about a year or two, doing power controls for that stuff. But it's what you see on paper and what you see in real life. They're sometimes very extremely divergent, the same way with our simulations and models. So where I work at now in our system, in our SMA group, we have a no saying, and it's that models are no damn good, but every once in a while they're a little bit useful.
Hey, this came up today. I've been doing work over at Teledyne. I've been a subject matter expert on a cool hypersonics effort, and the PhD today was saying, "Well, what do you?" He said, "What do we?" He said, "I've been modeling and simulating all these reactions," and I'm like, if we were a drag racer and we wanted to go 350 miles an hour, I said I wouldn't start with the models. I said I would go to the drag strip and find out all the guys that have ran 220 miles an hour, 215, 220. No, 320, sorry, 320. I said, we're talking top fuel. I said, I would want to know what went wrong and what's going to keep us from going 150 or 350. I said, that's the approach I take. I said, then you can figure out your models later. But right now, we need to quickly conclude this with people with real world experience. I'm a huge fan of that. You go talk to the machinists, you go talk to the welders.
Amen.
Do not be in a vacuum designing something just with Google searches.
And that's the way I designed it when I was at Bowden too. I went out and talked to all the guys who built this stuff and said, what's it take to do this? They hated the other engineers because they ignored the shop guys. And the shop guys loved me because I'd go out and say, what does it take to put this together? What does it take to do this? I found out what it took to build it, to manufacture. And that's what I'd put in my building materials. That's the way I lay my drawings out. I'd go and say, okay, what's it take to assemble this part on this panel? Can we do? I would talk to them a lot, and they loved me because the other guys drove them crazy. They kept giving them designs that wouldn't work, and they'd get mad. And then the engineers would blame the tech guys. It wasn't the tech guys' fault. It was the dumb engineers' fault for not doing his research.
Hey, you know, I was a electronics tech at Bowden, so I've been there too, and they were nuts. Hey, they were. Older man, he would be out there pulling high voltage wires. The electrical engineer troubleshooting with 220 volts, and it's like, this guy is something.
I'm surprised they didn't kill people at that place because both the owner of the plant and his boy, who was supposed to be the chief engineer, would walk straight up to an electrical panel without saying who's in a tank or where they're at around this thing, and they just start pushing buttons and turn the stuff on. And they, it was nuts. They were crazy. The first thing I heard when I worked there was an explosion in the plant, and it was they were trying to use PVC for high pressure air, and it wasn't a week later I heard another explosion, and there's a guy standing on top of a table just below where the explosion took place. There were shards of PVC sticking on that table all around him. None of it hit him. He was just lucky. And so they finally scaled it. But there was another engineer told him earlier, says, look, you can't go by the static pressure on that stuff. And he warned them that stuff was no good and they couldn't do that, but they were stubborn, Anyway, yeah. So we've had a lot of adventures working in industry and aerospace. But, like I said, it's Virgin Galactic, having hit space, that's an amazing accomplishment. A lot of people are belittling that. And I wouldn't at all belittle that because it's tough. Space is tough, but it is tough. So I'm not sure how much confidence I would put in actually would you ride on Virgin Galactic's SpaceShipTwo yourself? If they gave you a free ride, would you take it?
Do I have terminal anything? We got to qualify. No, how old am I when I do? No, at my age, yeah, I'd ride it, but at the same time, by the way, after the accident, you couldn't imagine how many people were crawling all over this solution. I mean, this program, was really started sucking money after that because we really, those guys had to really know what the crap was going on. We were getting ready to fire a big not hybrid, but a nitrous ethane booster at the Army. And I'm like, man, Burt, I want to know as soon as possible about this nitrous. And by the way, for everyone out there, I don't think I am a amazing designer with a lot of these propellants. I'm lucky in some incidences. Some of this stuff that I have written and different things, looking back, I realized I'm very lucky. It wasn't my time to leave the planet. So just remember that, sometimes you think it looks easy. This guy makes it look easy or not. I'm telling you that we're very lucky. So now we try to be very more pragmatic. Virgin has really done a good job, I think, trying to really make sure the customers are, it's as safe as it can be. And I'm not privy to how many test firings they've had, Greg. I know they've had a lot. It took a while.
They spent a lot of time. They spent a lot of time on it, and that's really to their credit. And a lot of people look down on them for that. But look, I've coined back when we were building rockets. I decided to coin my own laws of rockets. You might remember that. Allison's laws of rockets. Law 1, rockets go boom. Law 2, rockets have always gone boom. Law 3, rockets always will go boom. I mean, you got to realize when you're climbing on a rocket, you're taking a risk because to get into space, you got to have lightweight systems. You got to optimize as much as you can, get as efficient as you can. But at the same time, you're controlling an explosion with lots of high Q, high energy components that and it's like a chain. A rocket's a chain. Every link's got a hold. It's only as good as the weakest link. Those links go and you go kablooey. And the more parts you put in it, the more links there are in that chain. I do very much believe in the reliability is inversely proportional to parts count. So simple rockets certainly have a lot going for them. in reduction of parts counts. You know, Robert Truex wanted to put just one big rocket motor in something called a Sea Dragon. It was going to be like 5 times, maybe 10 times more powerful than the Saturn V. They just couldn't find nothing to build that big booster. But
right.
that was a cool idea. Oh, by the way, somebody in the chat room from Maine, New Days Old Way, said that you guys are the reason why the term "no guts, no glory" was coined. And that was one of the things we used to say, actually: "No guts, no glory." That and better get it while the getting's good. We had a few little adages we used to kick around. So yeah, we definitely.
Well, in these hiccups that even we've had near-death experiences with the Clark and the club.
Exactly.
Everything is a learning opportunity, and you bring that to the table. Like the work I'm doing, I have that hat on. I remember Glenn. I remember the various hiccups, and I've worked for other people too, by the way. I've worked for Firefly. I've done a lot of work for those guys and a few other companies. A lot of times, including the straddle launch guys, the reason we don't talk about a lot of this stuff that we've done is because, frankly, we're getting paid by some very rich people to have fun. And the last thing we want to do is get that call from someone saying, I wish you'd get our work done and quit talking about it. So I don't do these shows and stuff. Greg will tell you. I mean, I rarely kind of come out of hiding because I'm really trying to find something fun to do, or I'm working on something fun. So just keep that in mind. You know, I would rather ride SpaceShipTwo all day long as a glider suborbital to get me back on the planet down to the ground, because I got cross range and it'd be kind of fun. But to light a rocket motor up, 1,000, 2,000 feet above the ground and rely on that to break me, that's kind of scary. That's just me. I know it's all doable. It's only physics. It's engineering. What could go wrong?
Yeah, well, we've seen a lot of stuff go wrong, and that's the thing that just makes it unsettling. Is it takes a while to get through all the unknowns. We have known unknowns and unknown unknowns, and those unknown unknowns are scary. But the thing with the hazards and hazard causes is it can take hundreds of hours for one of these to actually materialize and raise its ugly head and bite you. And there's just, Burt Rutan, when he started out with this, he thought because he had a double-hulled spaceship that he was the safest guy on the planet. And he wasn't looking at a whole lot of other things that went into this. And he went around conferences calling NASA naysay and saying that he was going, yeah, there it is, guys. That's the hull of SpaceShipOne. That's where they cut the door out.
Yeah,
that is the door plug.
Yep.
That is a piece of SpaceShipOne in Tim Pickens' hand right there.
Yep.
That's the door plug for Spaceship.
Let me get close here. There's your honeycomb Nomex, and you've got your carbon fiber, your inner shell, and then the second shell is your outer. That's all between you and space. That's it.
Well, and I'll give Burt a little credit. That was a nifty idea, but that wasn't all there was to it. He overlooked a lot of other stuff, and when people started dying, he shut up then. He quit talking like that because he realized that space is a lot tougher than even he thought. It's hard. And some of us been saying that because we've been in it. Like I said, I went to that conference, right after the one of these conferences, right after the win on SpaceShipOne winning the X Prize, and a lot of the space advocates, a lot of my friends, they were my friends. They were running around. They were running around and said, "Hey, we're going to be flying people in space in a year." Absolutely, we're going to be flying people in space in a year. I said, "No, you're not."
Well, you're a wise man. This is some HTPB fuel grain.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah, and I got a bunch of it right here in this case too.
Okay.
Same thing right here.
Oh yeah, you're sporting the same stuff.
That's right. Hey, I walked in the airport carrying this on my shoulder after 9/11. I walked in like I knew what I was doing, and nobody even questioned me.
Hey, I bought a couple of ball pump real rockets. They're inert recently on Facebook Market, and I was hauling them on a trailer behind me, and they were sizable rockets pointed in the air. I'm sure it's on TikTok somewhere by somebody saying what's going on in Alabama.
When we were going to launch our ground launch one rocket, we were like running down the road in the truck with a rocket sticking up on the truck,
Oh yeah,
that?
Yeah.
So, you know, I thought the same thing. There's a whole convoy of us in cars. I'm sure the passengers passing by were going, what in the world?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
You know, guys, as a side note, you know, this is was SpaceShipOne was funded by the X Prize. This one's signed by all the pilots and Paul Allen and Peter Diamandis. But, you know, Greg and I and our team on the Cats Prize, we were the only ones to actually launch a rocket for that prize. There was everyone we'd meet say, "Oh, we'll have that in 6 months. We got this covered." The fact is, none of them launched.
That's right. We had 30 competitors, and a lot of them had more money than we did. Some of them said they already had their rocket, and yeah, we're going to win this. They were just totally confident, like a bunch of roosters were walking and scratching and crowing. And yet none of them could even make a launch attempt because they just underestimated what it was going to take. And it wasn't just a rocket project. It was an avionics project. It was a project of filing with the government. You had to have logistics. You had to be able to work with the FAA, the FCC. In our case, we also worked with Eglin Air Force Base. We developed a huge, you know, launch license application. And we developed avionics that defeated COCOM limits and GPS units. We did a lot of stuff, and we did it on a shoestring budget in the garage, but we had a good team because we were operating out of Rocket City. We had good people to draw on. We had a lot of excellent, very smart, good team members who were dedicated to the project. You mentioned Steve Mistakus, you know, helping me with the launch license application was Ronnie LaJoy. You know, we had Bill Brown on the balloons. We had Gene Young, who made our avionics safe so we didn't get EMI issues. We ran into that once upon a time.
We had Alpha Wright doing trajectory.
Al Wright.
And
yeah, he sized the fins. He did the fin design for us. He was Army, but yet he also helped you on SpaceShipOne, I believe. And we had a whole team of guys out of our group really supporting that SpaceShipOne.
Yeah, Steve Mistakus was one of the paid consultants too for working nozzle stuff. You know,
and a lot of people did it for free. They were just helping out. You know, you had a lot of assistance.
And that's something people don't understand. Just because they don't see me as a full-time employee, you know, at different places in the program, I am still answering calls. I'm consultant. They paid me. They gave me POs to support them. I get calls from Glenn. Glenn called me one day and said, "This guy's trying to pump nitrous oxide with a pump, electric pump, and it was turning cherry red today. You've got to contact these people and get them off this pump idea." And that is scary. And Glenn was terrified that something didn't go boom. So there's a lot of stuff risks that were taken. And I would have never done that had I been there for that operation. Never, ever. I was not a fan of centrifugal pumps for nitrous because nitrous, unlike LOX, it has a lot of energy from the heated formation. And it's high. I mean, as a monopropellant, it's almost 180 seconds, I believe, ISP sea level. So most of the energy for the hybrid rocket motors comes from that exothermic energy. So people don't realize that LOX doesn't have that. Yeah, you might have a horrific fire if you've got something organic soaking in it, like oil. You may have a hiccup from shock. But boy, you know, nitrous is, you got to handle it like you do, almost like peroxide, you know?
Well, I mean, I remember on one occasion that we were testing a hybrid motor from another company with our HARC organization. We did do some contract work with HARC. And we were testing.
Is that Hybridyne? Is that the name of it?
Yeah, we were testing a Hybridyne. What was it, a 5,000 pound thrust motor or 10,000 pound?
Yeah, it may have been 3.5. It was a liquid oxygen test that we did. Yep.
Right. And we were testing that just at the same place that we tested the HARC Cats Prize motor, just right you know, above my house here at that grass airstrip. And what was I going to say? We had I lost train of thought there. Where was I going?
We've done a lot of stuff. I think that's where you're going. We've covered a lot of ground.
Oh my God!
By the way, most everything.
And everything. I'm multitask. I'm going to bring up some videos here of our rocket launch for everybody that Bill Brown had videoed. I got a chest full of videos out here. I got to get converted one day to digital before the tapes rot. I hope I can manage to do that. Let me do a share screen here, and we're going to share this. This is also in the other video I did the other day with Bill. This is the Hart Catch Prize rocket on the aft end of the Mr. Offshore utility boat, 200 miles out in the Gulf of Mexico. This rocket is 17.5 feet tall. Oh yeah, we were talking about all these guys competing for the X Prize. Now somehow I got off on several tangents there, but this is the Catch Prize launch, the only Catch Prize launch for full altitude attempt made, and this rocket is being held by a string at this point. They're going to cut. The balloon is trying to take it off. The balloon is already in the air over the rocket. The exhaust ducts for the diesel engines are ducted over to the side so there wouldn't be any hot fuel particles poking holes in our balloon. On the deck of the boat here is probably Glenn May. I think that may be Glenn May there. And there's also Mike Smith, who is the chief engineer of the company that built the balloons. It's Aerostar. He and I jointly did a scientific paper on the return of the balloon launch platform. So we'll just play this, and I'll open the sound up on it too.
All right.
That's probably Glenn right there.
He loved balloons, man. He knew all about the history of the Man High program. There
was your little package to rip the balloon hanging down underneath this thing.
What a launch. Yeah, crazy. For those watching, we had one of these that actually the balloon popped and it hit the deck, and it ended up, it's at a local pub hanging. About killed a couple of us. That was
we were all running for our lives on that one. That's because the guy hung up on the launch gantry, and it made like a bow and arrow and launched at us instead of going in the air.
We were unpaid for that launch, and NASA was paying for the barge so they could learn how to launch balloon rockets with amateur balloon buffoons.
Right. Well, we got an ocean trip out. It was our first. It was something. But we went out to sea many times after that. Here's the actual launch of that rocket.
There's the launch, yeah.
Here we go. That's the gondola in a greenhouse, so the oxidizer tank will stay warm and stay up to pressure. We wanted 750 psi on the nitrous oxide. There we go. There's the launch. There's the rocket right there. And there's the balloon fully inflated. We had some issues with that launch, but that's another story.
There's so much we could talk about with that, how we had to be pretty crafty to get around the GPS lockouts.
Yeah, we did that.
Right.
Shoestring budget, what was designed to keep nation states from using civilian GPS, we figured out a way to get around it. Just some guys working out of a garage on a shoestring budget. So and these nation states happen to have a lot of their people in the United States as professors in electrical engineering departments, by the way. Yeah. We went to one of them and suggested, we were looking for some avionics help from the local IEEE group, and the guy got all excited, we can make millions of dollars. I don't know where we can sell them. And I just kind of walked backwards, just like, nope, never talked to him again. He was a professor of mine. He was actually a dean of electrical engineering at UAH, but I never spoke to him again after that. It's like, oh, holy crap, no, I ain't going there. I got to look at myself in the mirror every morning. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we'll stop that share. Well, if you had a choice of riding on a Blue Origin up and down or a Virgin Galactic, would you take a choice on that?
Well, isn't Blue right now about $2 million a seat? Isn't that what I heard this week?
I don't know. That's a lot more than Virgin, but hey, if they gave you a free ride,
it's.
I think Virgin will have a better ride. At least you get to ride around the airplane for a while. You get to float some. You get to glide back. I think it'd be a better ride.
That, man. I like the idea of going up. Whether it's an hour and a half, whatever it takes to get to the drop altitude, and then you go up. You have probably a much gentler deacceleration. The feather system Burt designed was just
it was a stroke of genius. That was smart.
Genius, man. And he, so yeah, I think right now I'd rather ride that. they've been through the hard knocks. I don't think Blue has really had to recover from a serious incident.
That's
And
what teaches you lessons. It's when you break things and destroy stuff, that's where you learn your
that's
lessons.
right.
They've definitely done
So
it. And that's what takes.
I'm gonna go with Virgin, man. They, after 5 hybrid programs and whittling it down to the one that they have now, got to remember they were really trying to make it safer, make it higher performance. To, things get overweight when you start putting safety on it. Next thing you know, you got to have more performance. And how do you get it when the tank's already built, the nitrous tank, and the motor cases are built? What you got to do is find, some really good wiffle dust propellant. And that's what they're doing, man. I really think that those guys are doing a good job. And yeah, I think I'd write it. I hope you would consider it, Greg, being a space guy.
You hope I'd consider it. Wow. I'd have to think hard about it. When you know a lot about a system, it always gives you doubts. Like I wouldn't want to rely on the space launch system that we're designing.
Hey,
when you're on the inside developing these things, you look at it and go, "Oh my God!" When you're in on all these decisions made, it's like, ew. Hey, but there's a lot of work goes into it. I'm sure these things will fly fine, but it's like when you see the sausage getting made, it's kind of disconcerting.
Well,
hey, I worked in Kentucky Fried Chicken in high school, and I wouldn't eat Kentucky Fried Chicken for 30 years.
I only didn't eat it after I got food poisoned. That only lasts about a year, and then I'll go back. The thing about the hybrids, we used to think that if you had a burn through in the motor case, it would give you some time to shut the motor down. And the reality of it has been proven. I'm not going to tell you where or how, but the fact is a composite motor case with a hot oxygen coming out the side of it at the front end of a motor, a hybrid motor, it can really cut that thing in half in a matter of seconds or less. So you could lose the whole back end, but
pick up that picture. Pick up that picture of that hybrid rocket you showed a minute ago.
Okay. But knowing that, by the way, they know how to work around these issues. You really want failure. If you're having a great day and everything's working perfect, how do you know where the edges of failure are, Greg? How do you know?
The picture of the hybrid rocket motor, showing the diagram.
Oh, yeah, so you have to test to failure.
Now see right there, that blue bubble in the front is inside the cabin of a spaceship. It's 750 psi. There's a whole lot of nitrous oxide in that. If that thing gets a little leak, you might start giggling before it goes boom.
Hey, this is SpaceShipOne configuration. Now on the SpaceShipTwo, they have isolation valves. Got a lot of separation between.
Okay, good.
They've got it all really tricked out. And
so what happens if that tank lets go and blows up?
Let me tell you what happened on the first EAC test, not EAC, the Space Dev test. They were bent over, they just basically said, hey, here's the test plan. We need to, we're going to go ahead and light our torch igniter at 0.7 of a second before we open the oxidizer valve. And I'm like, Burt, that's crazy. You don't want to do that. And he said, well, it's a competition. We got to let them learn. I said, well, if you're willing to launch your test stand over into Mojave there, then you can do that if you want. Well, we don't want to taint the process of the propellant competition. I pushed back and said, guys, I really think this is a horrible idea. They said, that's the way we do it back at the lab, which is like a 200-pound motor, like I have on my rocket bike.
Oh, yeah.
I said, oh, yeah. So I calculated real quick. I said, you guys could have it 20 or 30 pounds a second of nitrous in there. And you're going to light your torch igniter 0.7 of a second later. So basically, they cold flow, light the torch. So what happened is I told them that I thought they could have a hard start, decompose the nitrous. Well, me and Burt are standing out in the field watching the first 15 seconds, only first firing, 15 seconds. And about 15, 20 seconds, I saw the flame get shorter. And I said, Burt, this is a bad day. He said, what do you mean? I said, I think that seal on that valve got sucked up. I think they had reverse flow from the nitrous.
Oh,
Pressure.
oh,
And well, they couldn't shut it off. It was
oh,
it was bleeding. That motor burned for 7 minutes, I believe it was.
oh yeah. You showed me the video of that one. I
I
remember that
mean,
now.
we had fire starting to come out of the front side, and Burt was freaking out. You know, sent the fire.
That EAC, which company was that?
What's that?
Was that Space Delve or EAC?
It was Space Down.
Space Delve.
Yeah, and it was exact. And then they started bringing me in and said, next time I want Pickens in that control room. And I'm a consultant at this point, and so we straightened all that out. But imagine that. I mean, you can't. Oh, and the protocol was to dump the nitrous immediately if there were any problems shutting the engine off. And you want to do that as quick as you can while you still have vapor pressure, because if you just bleed down for a long time, you can actually freeze the nitrous and it'll just keep trickle burning for who knows how long.
God.
That was a scary day, but that's
Can't safe that thing letting us doing that.
yeah, that was a behind the scenes moment, Greg. That really happened. And boy.
Well, that was a lot of people learned the lesson that day, didn't they?
Oh yeah.
Well, they ought to know to listen to somebody that's fired 300 motors on a test stand.
Yeah, I told them they had the baptism by fire. You get
Literally.
It was moments like that where when you wonder if the program was going to ever make it, but Rutan, being experimental, he said, you're doing real experimental research when half the people on the program don't believe it's going to work.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that at first, but as we went forward, he said, well, and basically every engineer thinks his stuff is going to be fine, but it's everyone else's they have problems with. You know what I mean?
Well, us engineers are the biggest skeptics, but then especially when we're inside making that sausage, right?
Unless it's our making, then it's amazing.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, in my profession, we say there's a engineering space and safety space. What that means is the engineer, it's his baby. It's always going to work no matter what. And the safety guy is always, well, it's going to fail, and we're figuring out where it's going to fail. And maybe that's part of my cynicism is, one, I haven't done so many rockets and haven't seen so many things go kaboom. And two, working system safety. I do get that viewpoint. There are some things that worry me about these things. And if I were going to fly on a spaceship of any type, I wouldn't want to be on the first mission. And the reason I wouldn't want to be on the first, well, maybe the first 3, 4, 5 missions is because there's something called a bathtub curve in reliability. And that the reliability is very, probability of failure, let's say, is very high when stuff's new. But as you shake it out, all those components that really aren't that good in your early operations. And then you go along and you got an era of operations that things are pretty good. But as things start getting old and wearing out, your reliability goes to heck again, and your failure rate goes up. So there's failure rates high at the beginning and the end, and you got a pretty good era in the middle. The question is how wide is this area in the middle? I was concerned because these composites, you really can't tell when they're bad. You really can't look at them. This has got composites, of course, it's got an overwrap over it. But we got composite fiber in here. And we built a tank that we dropped that SL2 rocket motor, and we debated about using it, but we were afraid to, because we were afraid some of these fibers in the area had broken. And we had that motor X-rayed. We still weren't confident about it. You lose some of those fibers, you don't know it, and you put it under pressure, and it yields. Either the motor explodes, or if it's a wing structure, it snaps. You got wings on the White Knight 2 that are really long, although they made them beefier than what they were on White Knight 1. So I think they've improved it. And they put the jet engines out on the wings. I think they made a lot of improvements over what they had. But the fact that all those composites are being so much loaded repeatedly with heavy loads, and then even the feathercocks on the SpaceShipTwo, 3, whatever they're going to come up with down the road, they got a lot of stress on them. So I think somewhere down the road, you ought to consider them limited life items and figure out where you got to analyze it. And of course, you don't know until you really test stuff to destruction. Where's that other side of that bathtub curve at? You want to be, if you're going to fly, you want to be at the bottom. You don't want to be at the end.
I agree with you. And on the SpaceShipTwo program, every motor case and nozzle is new and they're not used. And there's pros and cons to that. Obviously, you would never reuse an ablative or an operational manned system.
That's what you need to do with that. They need to be new, but there's still a lot of structure that's going to get a lot of stress for a while.
The nitrous tank gets a lot of cycles, but Virgin went to an all metallic liner after some of this business came out.
Good.
So they've changed a lot. They are going to, they went to Marshall Space Flight Center and had them do a lot of impact sensitivity tests for nitrous oxide. There was a credible database they generated, and people don't understand that nitrous, it's been around a long time, but the application for it with respect to energetic devices, it's very limited what's out there. And the people that have had hiccups, they're not going to share that with you. No company is going to be responsible for creating a handbook for you to do energetic testing with. So the reason we don't know enough about it is, fact is, there's just not enough of a demand to go for these companies to generate these user guides. It makes total sense to me. And the lawyers probably won't allow it, corporate lawyers.
So would you actually feel pretty good about riding on a SpaceShipTwo?
Yeah, I would, but I'm like you. I want to give it a little time to see what happens. But
that's me. I'd give it a little time.
I think after flight 15 or 20, and that's not a lot. If you're really doing tourism, it's going to happen pretty quick. Then I'd do it. It's they're going to know a lot once they get into operations. They already know a lot. They've done a lot of ground testing. We just don't hear about it. We don't know. Even me, I'm not involved in those tests. We looked at liquid motors too, by the way, for SpaceShipTwo. Nitrous alcohol, how we could plug and play. In fact, Gary Hudson had the idea. Gary.
Oh yeah.
And I did some testing for him here in Huntsville, Alabama, just a few years ago for nitrous alcohol, and it had very good performance. And it may be a technology that makes sense for them down the road. And this is where you'd have a reusable rocket motor case, more of a traditional liquid motor case with cooling and whatnot, film cooling and other. And we would, it would solve some of the hybrid challenges, of trying to build one-off parts like composite cases, nozzles. But that can be pretty, if you have a serious effort, and they do, that can be managed just like the SRBs on the shuttle, all ablatives, long burns. It just takes a lot of persistence and quality control, and they've got all that. So yeah, I'm in, man. I'm in.
Well, that says a lot right there. That says a lot. So if you're in, that's huge.
Well, you think too, man. People gave lives for this program, and that is a humbling experience for a company or any person working it. I believe because of the hard knocks, they're going to be even more particular, Greg. It's tragic, but it is helping us be safer, by the way. I mean, unfortunately, it wasn't all for nothing, because Glenn, I'll tell you, he would be angry at me if I didn't support it. And I'm cool. I'm comfortable with it. I don't do it just for him, but I get it.
Okay. Well, you're talking about Gary Hudson and some of those guys. I want to bring back an old memory for you just for fun here.
Uh-oh. I know what it is.
What?
Well, I don't know. Oh, man, that's a long time ago.
I surprised you, didn't I?
Oh yeah, I was thinking we were going to get on the on something else that had to do with the rocket Rutan or the
Rutan.
Delta Clipper, man. I figured it's the Delta Clipper we bought.
Oh yeah, we got the Delta. Yeah, I got the Delta Clipper in my backyard, guys. I mean, how many people have keep rocket motors on their backyard and and wrecked rockets in their next to the log barn. This is C-SPAN, everybody.
Greg,
This is Tim. That's me right there. Gary Hudson's over here. And check this out. So we won't play this whole thing. It's an hour long, but we were played over and over and over on C-SPAN. This they actually aired this for like 2 or 3 or 4 years. I mean, I would be flipping through channels and go, what? They're still playing this? Holy smoke. I guess they like
hard to get a better signal on your
hang on, I
cell
gotta
phone.
mute that.
we got commercials going here, Greg.
Yeah, well, even C-SPAN does commercials. Imagine that.
That's pretty cool. You
So,
know, man, we've had a ride.
What we have here before us, ladies and gentlemen, are the pioneers who's here to bring you lower cost access to space and innovations in space transportation, entire systems and subsystems. These are the pioneers that are here to present to you now. So I'll start with the one I know best, Tim Pickens. Many of you are members of NSS. I've been members of NSS chapters. Tim has started a very successful company that had its roots and origins, in fact, in the local chapter in Huntsville, Hal 5. With our Halo project, he convinced me to put a hybrid rocket in our balloon launch rocket system, and we made it to the Guinness Book of World Records with that. We started that Hart company, and Tim moved and worked for Burt Rutan later.
you don't look any different.
SpaceShipOne out in the desert. And now he's come back to Huntsville and started a company called Orion Propulsion. He's had contracts with Gary Hudson, among others.
And Gary's right down the table.
He does a lot of commercial work, test stands, subsystems, all kind of things that pertain to rocket motors and rocket tests. He's even managed to get a subcontract through Boeing on the Orion, on the Ares 1 launch vehicle for RCS systems. So
Well,
it's a very interesting technology that he's involved in there. He's a very innovative entrepreneurial company that he's running there.
we've had enough, Greg.
Angelo.
By the way, Gary Hudson, I met him at conferences and I was always amazed at some of the stuff he's done. And if it wasn't for the contract he gave us for the air launch and HMX, another program we had for T-Space, I don't think I would have made it in business. If it wasn't for Gary Hudson providing me some upfront money to get my project started for him, it really made me. And I want to tell everybody that, Gary's been amazing and great guy, and appreciate him, everything he's done.
Yeah. Well, he's been quite a pioneer for many years way back. I mean, when I first started, early on in the L5 Society, we were hearing Gary Hudson this and Gary Hudson that.
I hear you. Well, he's done so much, and he was one of the first guys to actually raise a lot of money from a couple of investors. One of them was a book author, and Tom Clancy, and he built that big rotary rocket. If you ever go to Mojave, go out there and look in the little rocket park, and you'll see it, what the remnants are. And it's amazing. They flew that thing 60 feet tall. They're riding, flying it down the runway with peroxide tip jets, and they don't have enough yaw. So when it touches down, one of the videos, you can see it rotating, 60 foot tall pole rotating, pivoting on one landing gear. It was scary. I wasn't there for that launch, but I've just watched the videos. It's crazy.
Wow.
Scaled Composites, they built most of that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got a little bit of a Scaled Composite aero shell, just little flakes of it left on my DCX rocket wreckage right here in my backyard next to my log barn.
I robbed the tanks off that, by the way. I used them for projects.
Yeah, and you took valves off of it. This was after they finally crashed and burned the rocket. We got the remnants of it. They flew that thing repeatedly like a helicopter. It was the first vertical takeoff and landing reusable rocket of any scale, and they did a lot of experiments with it. And they had an F-16 flight computer. They did it as part of the SDIO program, Strategic Defense Initiative Organization, and quite interesting. I actually lobbied to get that thing approved when I was chairman of the phone tree of the National Space Society. I couldn't get but then, of course, I had the position later. Clinton Reynolds back then, who started Instapundit, I believe. He was our chairman of the policy committee at the time, and I became that later. But he would not even answer my darn phone call, and I just said, "Heck, I'm going to renegade, and I'm going to promote this thing." And we actually lobbied the bureaucracy and the DOD instead of congressmen to get that thing approved, and it worked. And Bill Gallbatz added me to he was a program manager of that program, to the DCX Hall of Fame for having done that. You know, Pete Conrad flew this thing. You know, he was the pilot. Well, the joystick pilot was unmanned. He remotely piloted it.
And Jeff Spotable, wasn't he one of the program managers or something?
Yeah, he was the Air Force guy behind it. I called him up one day. I talked to Jess, and then Pete just happened to walk in the room, and Jess goes, "Hey, guess what this guy's got in his backyard?" And he was just laughing. I was wanting to get some signatures from it, but I waited too long, and then Pete died. I was going to sell bits and pieces of it, you know.
Did you guys ever read the Harry Stein book, Halfway to Anywhere, about the DCX, the development?
No, I hadn't read that book. They got a lot of articles.
Good, man. And everyone, the haters would say, "Oh, that's single stage to orbit. That's crazy. Vertical takeoff and landing, it's worthless." This is the experts, by the way. Until Elon come along, they're like, "Oh, you're giving up too much propellant to do that." It's like, okay, well, if we launch in Texas and land in Florida, that's pretty interesting. Hey, if we have a barge, that changes everything. Of course, the experts would say, "Well, that's different. You didn't tell me all that." Yeah,
it turns out fuel costs didn't that bad.
He flew a booster the last launch. I think it was the 9th or 10th flight. Same booster, reusable, man. He makes it look easy, doesn't he?
Yeah, but they blew a lot of them up before he got there. To get there, he had to have the audacity to blow a lot of stuff up. And that's what it takes. NASA couldn't handle that because it'd be criticized to death, and everybody would be throwing knives at NASA for doing something like that. But it is out of his own pockets. He could take the heat and was willing to do it. And he had the fortitude. A lot of individual investors, if they were putting money in something like that, they would have bailed. They would have walked out.
Oh, yeah.
His intestinal fortitude is why that program, I think, has a great chance of succeeding, even with the space Starship. I got a couple of these mock Starships here. I don't know if you ever met Ben Husett. He was.
Yeah, absolutely. He was an advocate at Marshall for our balloon stuff.
Yeah. Well, Ben Husett also was from Minnesota chapter of the National Space Society, the old L5 Society before that. He 3D printed these off for me for the Starship, by the way. And I'm going to use these to show how we can do a strong back in the atmosphere of Venus to build my very first. They have a configuration where they can make for refueling. How I could use that as a strong back, floating in. These would actually float in the atmosphere of Venus if they didn't take in Venusian atmosphere into the fuel tanks. If they don't do that, they'll actually float. And the cool thing is, I could build my very first versions of my habitat for Venus atmosphere. I'd start with a 300-foot wide balloon instead of that mile wide one that I've shown everybody. So I've been working that stuff up, and I'll do videos on that in the future. But I think the Starship, if he pulls it off, if it all works, is going to be nothing short of revolutionary.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of ifs there. In the meantime, Virgin Galactic's got a good opportunity to make some money. And if Blue Origin's charging $2 million a seat, yeah, they do too. So it's going to be an interesting time coming for space. There's going to be a lot of exciting stuff coming. It's all risky though. So, just remember Allison's laws of rockets. Rockets go boom. Rockets have always gone boom. And rockets always will go boom. Our hope is that to go boom a whole lot less often. And that's the kind of job I got working system safety, is to make sure that. So you got to be able to see things in failure space and see the shortages. So you think I ought to take a ride on Virgin Galactic if they offer it?
I think they need to call you and me, and we'll put our money where our mouth is.
We'll I ain't got a whole lot of money right now.
Well, maybe they'll sponsor it just to get the good old boys to tell the backstory and going forward. They might
do that. They might do that, and
never know.
Hey, I could put it on YouTube, right?
Yeah, that'd be awesome, man.
Wow.
As I get older, I'm more interested in the suborbital anyways, because frankly, I don't relish the idea of not being in my bed for too long. I'd rather go up, get the view, get the experience, and then come on back home.
But Tim, my grandma was probably the first flat earther because she thought space was pristine and that was heaven and people couldn't go there. And so when man landed on the moon, she said, well, God's going to kill them. They can't go there. They won't be able to get there.
They broke through the firmament.
Yeah.
Whatever they call it.
When they were on their way back, because she made the world was square because it says in Revelation that the angels hold the winds at the four corners of the earth. So when they were on their way back, she said they won't live. But when he splashed down and everything was good, she said, well, it never happened. This was back in July of 2016.
Hey, I saw.
Hey, she always said it never happened until I graduated from college. And one day she looked at me real funny. She always called me Greg. She said, now, Greg, now you get on them rockets now. They're dangerous. I just died laughing. It's like, okay, all this time she made out like she didn't believe it, but she really did.
That's good. Somebody said on the Virgin flight the other day, they were on TikTok, they were saying, there's no way this is real. It's CGI. And they can't penetrate the firmament.
Oh my God, yeah.
I think these people are crazy, man.
Well, you know, they say the Mercury and Gemini flights were CGI, except CGI didn't exist back then. Or they think all the pictures are scanned. You know, all the pictures from unmanned systems and satellites are definitely digitally scanned. But there were people up there with film cartridge cameras taking pictures from those early missions. And so there are pictures that are filmed.
Go to TikTok, you can find anything.
There you go.
So much conspiracy, man.
I don't TikTok, so.
It's entertainment, I can tell you that.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, some people think you can't believe in God if you believe in space. It's like, well, my God's bigger than that.
I agree with you 100%.
You're a man of faith. You believe in God. You believe in Jesus very much. I know that your whole family does. Yeah, and you're a space guy. Some people can't reconcile that, you know. But Huntsville, Alabama, we're the Bible Belt. We got a rocket city in the Bible Belt. We got a lot of rocketeers here.
Hey, that's true. You know, if the more I learn, the stupider I feel, and I try to learn a lot. And I realize that order doesn't come from chaos, and, so I can sort of do the rest of the math. Yeah, I'm one of those.
All right. Wow. Well, Tim, we've kicked this thing around. We've talked about Virgin Galactic. We've said they've done a good job. Actually, they've done their homework. They spent their time. They've worked on the systems. So you're feeling safe and confident about it. You've worked inside this stuff. You've worked for Burt Rutan. You've worked for Paul Allen. You've done contract work for Virgin Galactic. You've sold them valves. You've done engineering consulting to them on their engines. Some of your valves, I know you used to have a huge warehouse of valves and things like that on Virgin Galactic. So you're quite intimately, and you talked to a lot of people there, so you've been quite intimately involved with that for a long time. Yeah. And so I just got to say, I really do wish them the very best. I hope they have great success and succeed. I was getting worried about them when I saw a lot of people leaving the company. Yeah. CFO, and then George Whiteside's left. For those that don't know, I actually hired George Whitesides to be the executive director of the National Space Society when I was chairman of when I was chairman of the executive committee, when I was the CEO of the National Space Society. So I've actually hired George once, and George and I, we stayed in the same hotel room, and things like that. So I actually tried to get him to interview for this, but I think he was kind of afraid where we might go, and he never responded. So George, if you're out there and you're listening, you still got a shot to get on here.
Yeah, George, come on, man.
That's right, George. Let's hear you. Let's talk up. Give you a chance to talk up Virgin Galactic or whatever else you're into now.
Yep. There's a lot, By the way, I hope that the Electron survives some of their hiccups with launch, because that's a pretty cool technology. Electric pumps, electric propulsion. As far as turning pumps, pumping fluid. I hope they survive it. I think Firefly's doing amazing work, and I've been boots on the ground a lot out there in Texas. Not lately, but I think they are really cutting edge, man. They're running an engine cycle it's a tap off, but it's basically you don't need a gas generator to spin pumps. They use the engine combustion tap into it. Really cool, very throttleable. I'm very, very impressed with those guys, by the way. And I'm not a stockholder. I haven't been out there in several years, probably two years maybe. So I wish them luck. I think they're in a sweet spot for a launch size. The Electron's on the very edge of the spectrum of what can you do with it, right?
Amen.
You know, they're talking about clustering those now, by the way, where they'll put a bunch of them together and do a little bit more. I don't know. I'm excited about what's going on, Greg. We really are in the most awesome time to be alive, in my opinion. There's a lot of bad stuff going on in the world, but there's a lot of good stuff too. So,
well, it's going to be interesting. There's no doubt about that. So, there's more. There'll be more material from my 2 YouTube channels. And I'm actually thinking about doing a product channel too, product review channel. Since I'm going to be building a bunch of stuff in Arizona.
Hey. Speaking of Arizona, they're going to be releasing the UFO files June 1st. So maybe we can talk about Area 51 and S4.
Well, just stand up and show everybody the shirt you're wearing.
Well,
okay.
I like to have fun. It gets people talking sometimes. I get to hear people come out of the closet and say, so tell me,
There you go.
Are you a believer? I said, yes, on a few fronts. It's all good.
Well, hey, we are in interesting times. There's no doubt about it. So we'll have to see what they come out with in June. The Navy's been leaking a lot of hints and suggestions, whatever that adds up to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't tell them. I think they're demonic. That's what I think.
Well, I think 99% of them are us, but I sort of tend to believe that we reversed engineer some things that we've got our hands on. And I'll leave it at that. I think we're very far ahead in a lot of areas because
I think I've seen a couple of ours.
Yeah, I reported one back in about 15 years ago to MUFON.
Did you?
Yeah. I mean, my daughter saw it. It was she was 15. She was terrified, and I was.
Near Fife? Weren't y'all near Fife when y'all?
Yeah, we were up there on the Lookout Mountain or
Sand Mountain.
Sand Mountain, yeah.
That's where I grew up.
That's the mountain before we crossed Lookout. So we, yes, it was Sand Mountain, and we're coming from Gunnersville. So we come over the mountain, and that's
where I was born.
It's hovering above the trees, and it looked metallic, but it also had a glow around it. It looked like there was an aura or definitely it was ionizing the air, it looked like, and it moved around. We didn't see it leave and take off, none of that. It was more of a hovering across the tree lines. It was crazy. And we were on a really, this is late night, so we could have stopped, took pictures. But I'll tell you, when stuff like that happens, sometimes you don't think about it. You're just like, did I really see that? Is it real? This is crazy. And
Fife is famous for sightings, by the way.
Oh yeah.
There's also Bigfoot sightings up there on Sand Mountain.
It does make you wonder if if a lot of the mutilations, if we agree that the technology is real science, it's real physics. I don't think the laws of physics are being disobeyed, maybe as we know them, but I wonder if the cattle mutilations are part of a ritual for.
Hey, Tim?
Yeah.
What do you think about this diagram? Does that tell you anything, make you think a little bit?
Yeah, I see some vectors there. What are we talking here? I see the speed of light. Well, I know you're into gravity modification as one of your hobbies as well.
Me? Nah.
I'm just trying to lose weight. I need a device I can put in my pocket that gives me a local gravity reduction effect. So
there you go. There you go.
That's what I need.
There you go.
I'll let you know.
We like to have a little fun. We try to look at it from physics and see if there's an angle in there somewhere.
Absolutely.
And who knows? There might be something one day some of us stumble on.
We could get into this on another talk, man. Maybe we talk about the physics of what we're this phenomena we're called UFO hovering or flying. Yeah. you know, not mock, but multi knot high, let's say maybe up to 600 knots underwater is what some of these craft have been reported.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Think about it.
Man.
That's coming out. That's been coming out with the various people. Now the pilots are not so scared to talk about it. When they were flying, they would be in psychological evaluation. So nobody talks about it. So
Amen.
that's
Amen.
the way it is. Hey.
Somebody
Well,
says, what do you think of iSpace, the private Chinese rival to SpaceX? I think it was just cheap copiers. What do you think?
Yeah, it's probably a copycat because I can't imagine what could be more, well, who knows? We'll see. You know, Leonard David was writing for Space News. I think it was Leonard. He called me one time and said, hey, I'd like you to do a story with me on the launch of the Falcon Heavy. One of the first launch, he said, do you think it's going to work? And I said, you know, Elon has proved me wrong at every turn, and I am no expert on what he does. I do not want to do a story on this. And I didn't. I declined. Still having an opinion. I'm like, that I wouldn't bet on that guy for nothing. Wouldn't bet against him. So
yeah, you never know. You never know. Well, when he started out, the reliability was really low. And that's one of the reasons that programs like the Space Launch System got the momentum they got, because his reliability was really low. But now it's got momentum just because it's got momentum and contracts and jobs and districts, and that's all Congress critters care about. So, but it'll be interesting. It's still good to have more than one horse in the race. So we'll have to see how this goes in the long run.
You know,
a lot of good work going in.
He's certainly not your typical lying salesman, because he'll tell you straight up, we're probably going to die.
He does that. He does.
Some of us aren't going to make it.
That is important. That's why I come up with Allison's laws of rockets, is to get people in the right frame of mind that this is risky. Yeah. It's absolutely risky. Absolutely. If you get on a rocket and you don't know that thing's risky, then if somebody didn't tell you that it's risky, then they didn't do their job.
Right.
That's deceptive. It is very dangerous. And that's part of my point with this whole video, is that these guys are doing amazing work. I give them all kind of credit for what they've done. They've done amazing work, and it's taken a while, and that's understandable, and I commend them for that. But at the same time, if you're going to go strapped down on the seat of one of these things, you got to know that there's still a good probability that you won't be walking home that night.
Yeah, you want to know that probability for sure.
You know, I got to wonder if Kristen McAuliffe understood that when she rode on the space shuttle. I don't know. How much are people taught of the dangers? You know, back then NASA was saying, oh, the probabilities of loss of a vehicle are like 1 in 20,000. Well, I used to hear that. I got mad. It's like, that ain't true. I know better than that. That ain't nowhere near true. And of course, now we see that, you know, it wasn't. You know, they figured like, you know, 1 in 50 there for a while was what they were using. And that was a lot more accurate.
Well, you know, for Christie, you know, that they went out of spec with that launch. That O-ring was never certified to go that cold.
No.
So that was a pure political decision.
And it bit them in the rear end. Yeah, don't let the politicians make the decisions. Leave it to the engineers.
That's right, man. You know. So,
yeah, we understand this stuff. We know where, you know, once you break a few things, you know what breaks and why it breaks. You know, but you got to break a few things to appreciate that.
You absolutely have.
And you don't get to break things. See, that's one thing. That's problems I had. The reason we started this Halo program years ago, we were tired of doing paper studies at NASA. We figured out we need to get our hands dirty. And we learned so much doing this. And what spun off? We spun off a team of brilliant engineers who went all over the industry that had real practical experience, and guys like you that started your own company that took a core of these guys. And a lot of that core you took from our Harkin Halo and the OPI, or Orion Propulsion, went over today and are working for Dynetics. And so they're doing amazing work there. There's some really good guys.
Yeah, I mean, they were one of the prime contractors for the lunar lander. I mean, to carry people to the surface. Those are my guys. A lot of my guys are leading that stuff. You know, obviously they didn't get the down select, but it's amazing, you know, that we didn't have a quality system when Ares was talking to us about being a vendor. We had like 10 people, and I thought, these people are smoking it. Boeing's never going to do business with us. But through a lot of miracles and believing, we got there. We got the quality program. We slam dunk. Thanks.
I look at it like this. When I look at Orion And then Dynetics. When I look at Virgin Galactic and all these guys, they are building off our legacy. Tim, it's like we got grandkids. Tim, these are spinoffs of what we did. They're our grandkids. These ventures are. I don't know. I'm not rich from them. I'm head over heels in debt. But there is some satisfaction in knowing that a lot of stuff came out of the things we did. There was other spinoffs too. You know, it wasn't just that. And a lot of our guys developed careers and they learned knowledge and techniques they wouldn't have had otherwise had they not worked in the shops building these hybrid rockets.
Oh yeah.
And the avionics we built. We learned a lot of stuff. And I go forward now with knowledge of how it breaks and what can really happen, you know, after having my hands dirty. You had me cutting graphite nozzles in your, I'm an electrical engineer. I should have been working over with Gene Young, but I spent most of my time in your shop instead doing rocket parts.
Yeah, that was fun, you know, and for the record, you know, we machined all of our own parts there in my shop.
Now, what a lot of people, what will tickle a lot of people is this. Well, a lot of people don't realize this. I did the business end of the Hark and Halo stuff. You did the engineering end. You had the business degree, and I had the engineering degree.
Yep. Hey, when I started Orion 3 years into it, it was politics and stress, and I hated. I was getting further away from the hardware, and I'm like, this is horrible. I've created Frankenstein here, and he's a monster. He's a big one, and now I can't kill it. So I thought, you know, this has been an interesting ride, but I'm not wired to manage 45 people. That's not what I do. So that's why anybody calls me a manager, you better define it, because it is. I'm a hardware guy. I don't care to be in that management position. So I did sell, but our company was owned by it was 39% of our employees and folks have they've got stock. They got a nice exit during that deal. I was very generous. I was appreciative of the have the caliber of people would leave the good jobs and come to work for me, and that meant a whole lot.
Whether you know it or not, you're still a stockholder in Hark. It still exists.
Is there enough to push you out of the driver's seat?
You want it, you can have it. I'll just back away.
How about if I trade you some rocket parts? We'll talk about
that'll work. That'll work. I'll start a museum here.
Yeah, that's it. I got a lot to put in there too, by the way.
Yeah, I could definitely have a space museum. And I've heard hints I'm going to get a lot of geological type stuff in my inheritance in not too distant future. So,
okay.
So I might be starting a museum one of these days.
Good. Well, did you have any questions in our feed here tonight?
All right, hey guys, here's your last chance. We need to go. We've been on here almost 2 hours, which is a lot longer than I meant to be. So let's see what questions y'all got. Wally Tango Foxtrot says scary stuff. The copycat. Yeah, no kidding about that. I hate to be a test pilot, he said. Let's see. Edge Brand Agency says, great to know it's guys like you that helped to create and develop some of our latest tech. True pioneers. Salute you fellas for your contributions over the years. Well, thank you, Edge. I appreciate that.
Thanks.
A lot of people see me like at work, and they have no clue of the things we did. They don't have no clue of the things I did in the National Space Society either, pushing for programs and things and getting regulatory relaxations on these things that have enabled the space launch industry. That's enabled new space. But you and I were new space before there was a term for it. I mean,
yeah, and our work was so interesting. We were all over the news, by the way. You remember that local news?
Oh yeah, we made local news like crazy, but not just in our area. We did when we went to North Carolina. We made the local news there. We made some network news. I was on national talk radio a few times, like well, not talk radio, but on NPR and stuff, like some of their programs and other things. ABC News tried to catch our launch at Cerro Gordo, but we didn't do that launch, and so they didn't send their A-team reporters when we actually did launch, but they played our Cat's Prize launches like feed on a lot of channels.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of news coverage, and you and I got a lot of TV coverage after that, you know, from
SpaceShipOne was top news, man.
Oh yeah.
The Huntsville's involvement in that was a big story. they embraced us, man. Everybody here in Huntsville, they're big time pro space, pro commercial, successful government pro, whatever. Let's just finish something.
Oh yeah.
So I'm with you, man.
There's a lot of people, special locals, know that we pioneered the engine technology used in SpaceShipOne, which evolved to SpaceShipTwo. A lot of other people have been involved in it. They've taken it several steps farther, but they know that. And I've got an award here that's all about that. This is the Space Pioneer Award awarded by the National Space Society for what we did with our Halo SO1 rocket, basically.
Got it. Okay.
And I got a picture of it hanging on the wall, of course.
That's cool, man.
It wasn't as big as our Cat's Prize rocket. I think their Halo rocket, how long was that? 7 foot? And our Cat's Prize rocket was 17.5 feet. So, but I got a picture. Hang on, I'll get the picture off the wall here. So.
Well, you're going to sing us a song about the Halo?
Halo! Yeah, hang on, I will.
That's it.
And it goes like this. Tim Pickens is a rocket man. He can build a rocket from a garbage can. Hello! And get a rocket from a balloon, it off we go.
That's it. That's the Von Braun shot right there.
There it is, Tim. There we are with our Halo SO1 rocket.
Yep.
And we did. I can show a few things on PowerPoint real fast, and we gotta get out of here. But
it's been fun.
We've gone a long time here. Well, this thing can go back and forth. Oh, hang on. Let me stop share. You gotta hit the right share button. Ding, 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 ding. Hit escape. That thing's kind of hung up. Give me a second. I'm going to blast through a few of these charts, I think. We'll just flip through them real quick because there's a lot of verbiage and we're not going to cover.
Okay.
I need to just do pictures presentation. Where's it at? Yeah, let me go to the front. There's one. That's a good one to start on. Ding, 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 ding. So let me do a share. Give me a second on momentum, please. Tim, you remember this thing, don't you? Our balloon launch return vehicle?
Absolutely. Got a lot of sweat and tears in that one.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law worked on that too, John Dudley, remember?
Oh, yeah, I remember John Dudley. That looks like Steve Mistake is standing right there, probably.
Sure does.
That's Gene Hornbuckle.
Yeah, he was a big help, man.
That's me. Here's Mike Smith, the head of the chief engineer at Aerostar. I don't know who that's probably Chase Reniger standing over there. I'm not sure. Your was he your brother-in-law or what's he now?
Yeah, he married my my niece. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Not really brother-in-law, but
okay. There's that thing. There you are with it. There's the engine over here, the solid. They had a little motor grain and a oxidizer tank went up in this tube. Pitot tube, the cameras in here, aero control surfaces. There's a cold gas reaction control system, the point in the azimuth we wanted when we launched it. That's our small subscale flight model there. That's Gene Young working on the avionics down at the port. That's Bill Brown installing a high gain antenna, which we used it to get all our telemetry back for remote pilot. Gene Hornbuckle was the remote pilot for this thing. That's the boat we went out on to see Michael Calais. That's our Cat's Prize rocket again, the rocket before we really assembled it. Our avionics that we built that defeated the COCOM limits. Our launch avionics, which we had to decode. We had a coded system so somebody wouldn't fire against us. We built ground stations. That's on the deck of the Mr. Offshore. I could tell you war stories. That's the balloon that actually came apart on the deck of the boat on the C. Michael Calais. You missed that. Chase Reniger was standing right under that like a second before it came down. The Aerostar had not put the top knot in that thing right, and it came loose, and that balloon came straight down like a tower falling,
Didn't that payload weigh a few hundred pounds also?
It might have. It was not light, and Chase had just been standing under it just before that thing came down. So I'm glad he got away. He was a kid in high school. We took him out to sea. You know, we took a lot of people out to sea when they were kids. There's a Halo. Hey, here's our Ground Launch 1 rocket from Manchester, the one we carried up in the back of a truck. That's our Halo SO1 rocket in this gondola. And here's our Von Braun picture. There's Tim. There's me. There's Steve. You know, I was trying to turn sideways to give everybody more room. And Steve said, "They're hogging up there, hiding Gene Young."
Oh yeah.
Gene Young, Gene Hornbuckle. We had a pair of jeans, right?
Yeah. There's Peter and
Clay. Yeah. Clay.
Yep.
So, yeah, and there they are on the deck of the Pearl River barge. That's Al Wright down here putting something up a nozzle, it looks like. And there's Steve Mustakas up on that gantry. This rocket is hanging from the ceiling straight to Ale Brewery in Huntsville, Alabama.
It almost killed us.
I know, we're running for our lives. That's the closest to it. Running for our lives from that rocket. There it is on the balloon, our first freestanding balloon inflation on the deck of a boat. The avionics, there's our avionics lab, Gene Young. So that's where I said it ought to have been working, but I spent my time in the rocket lab instead. Oh, somehow I got knocked out. What happened? Anyway, so let me see if I can scroll forward real fast here. I got knocked out. Maybe I was scrolling too quick.
I feel old, Greg.
Yeah, we started this in 94.
Yeah.
1994. That was 1997 right there. 11 May 1997, Tim. That was the 20th of June, 1998.
Yeah. Well, when I went to work for Scaled, I had to leave all this and give up my hobbies. So it kind of slowed things down.
Oh, this may not be the whole presentation. I don't know what's going on. I was wanting to show all our, let's scroll down this way. Maybe it's just blowing up for some other reason. I was wanting to show all of our SO1. Oh, well. Yeah, okay, this is not the entire presentation. I got some other charts somewhere, different presentation or something got deleted. Slide 20 of 88. Why is it? Okay, now there's something not going right here. Anyway, I'll break loose out of this. We've gone long enough. We've gone 2 hours here.
2 hours, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's actually going to hurt the rate of people that watch. When I see a 2-hour video, a lot of people just won't watch it.
Why don't you just split it up into 2?
Well, it's already going live like it is now.
I
hit the record button. I never hit the record button when we started, but I can download it. Cut it up. Well, here's the thing, Tim. We can come back on here and we can talk about rocket projects and different aspects of what we did and what you've done. And you and I could do an interview a week for 10 years, probably.
I agree.
We could do an interview a week for 10 years and have a lot of fun doing it. Maybe just have our own talk session. Make a show out.
Hey, you got the look. You need to be on some rocket show or something. You know, you're Gandalf, man. You got the wisdom. I just got a lot of the.
You got me lured in with the production team, and I wound up on the.
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, I do strange evidence. Some of the wacky, cool stuff that they inquire about. I do experiments for the NASA Unexplained Files show and Discovery. So those are things I do for education, fun, doesn't pay. And that's where I told them Greg was an incredibly interesting guy. And they told me they were doing a prepper type show. And I said, I got the guy for you. And Greg came by and they were filming him day one. And then he got a trip to California and did some stuff, right?
Yeah, and well, on a show called Strange Earth. And it's not a prepper show. It's just it's analyzing video, weird things in video. So the craziest thing is that Rex Bear and I were actually walking through the Mount Hollywood Tunnel, and we made our own crazy video because when I shot at Halo, you can see light going down the tunnel.
Oh.
Just go figure that one out. I got a video on that in this channel and a link to Rex's channel. He had a better camera than me. We both caught it in our cameras.
Wow.
It's weird. Rex
are we ready to wind down?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Thank you for inviting me on. This has been fun.
Oh yeah, it's been fun.
Well,
We didn't have a big number of people at any one time in the room. It's been kind of low, but what happens is a lot of people cycle through. So there's no telling how many actual views we had. And this will get views accumulating over time after we post, because Bill Brown and I did this and it was about the same thing. That video is up close to 400 views now.
Cool.
So hopefully this will get some traction. But more than anything, people can see that we've done this stuff. We've been there, done it. I thought it was hilarious. I posted something on one of the SpaceX sites, you know, one of my videos talking about the MK1 explosion. While I was sitting in the wreckage of the Delta Clipper that I got in my backyard, and somebody got in there and made a comment, "Oh, you shouldn't be taking newbies like this on this channel, in this room. You need to go with the guys like, you know," and he cited, you know, several other YouTubers that, you know, got bigger space channels. You need to go with these guys, and like Scott Manley and, you know, Space Cow. Well, there's different ones, you know, that he cited, and I just died laughing. It's like, really? I work this stuff. I've been working this stuff for decades. I mean, you don't know Jack Diddle. I am no newcomer. I got more under my belt than all those other guys combined.
And we poured a lot of our own money into this stuff, volunteer stuff forever. I mean, this is, you gotta want it, man. You gotta want to change the world a little bit. And
I worked space in the daytime, and then we did this on our own hours, out of our own pockets, for years on end, getting very little sleep. So it's like running more than 2 careers simultaneously, and we've done this for decades. So, you know, I've got more space experience than 2 retirees already. And you too.
Oh, I know.
Especially you've been all over. You've been with all these entrepreneurial companies, the things you've done. Tell me, you've done amazing stuff.
Well, I appreciate it. I've been very blessed, and I am very fortunate to, I don't, you know, this ride has been incredible. You know, I've got to do so many things. You know, I've been out to see the Elon plant, and even Elon, a couple different visits, not directly for him, but he would always want to say hey to some people, or they assume you want to go say hey to Elon. Man, we were there for the Falcon 1 rocket. My brother Barry, who's watching, I don't know if he still is, but he and my brother Randy, we all went out there and toured that hardware and with the X Prize Cup. And it was really cool, man. I mean, we have done so many things, shuttle launches, VIP.
Those X Prize Cups. No, by the way, Tim, I was there when he rolled the Falcon 1 out at the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C.
Very cool. Very cool.
So,
you know, I don't have a relationship with Elon, but I respect the heck out of the man. And I have talked to him a little bit. In fact,
I've talked to him.
We talked about them buying my company when I wanted to be sold. I thought we could help the Shelby, Alabama factor, because Shelby and Elon were not big buddies, as you know, publicly. That was the good old boys from Alabama were not
definitely true,
as he thought. So yeah, but he was in the middle of a divorce, and his Gwen Shotwell said, "Man, this is a bad time to be buying companies."
Yeah, I met Gwen Shotwell first. I met her at a conference in a tiny little, actually it was a workshop at JSC on cheap access to space. There weren't but about, I don't know, maybe 10 of us at that workshop, maybe 12. And, you know, it was a 3-day workshop, and I was real impressed by her then. But at that time, SpaceX hadn't done diddly, you know, that's before they launched anything. So it was really interesting. She's a dynamic person.
Oh, yeah. You know, I worked for Bob Bigelow as a contractor and as an employee a few years ago here in Huntsville. And he's a very interesting man.
Yeah, well, I was once hired to work for him there in Nevada, but they delayed my start date, and I finally just told them no. And you almost took me in to work for under your contract, but
okay.
You remember that?
Yeah, I do. Well,
probably a good thing I didn't, because he pulled the plug on all that.
Yeah, if you're gonna, it's not a matter of if you're gonna walk the plank; it's when. It's and the storms get rough sometimes. I say eventually you'll be on the plank.
Commercial space can be a ride.
Oh my God!
You've definitely been surfing it for a long time, Tim.
Yeah, the things we do for money.
We'll build rockets and spacecraft for food. Yeah, we had a T-shirt that said that at one time. Remember, it's a halo on the front that says "We'll build rockets."
I had that bumper sticker and "Thrust We Trust."
Yep. Well, we had that article and where you were interviewed. Both of us got interviewed by Air and Space Magazine.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. That was like a 6-page spread. You know, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, an Air and Space Magazine.
Yeah.
That was cool. And the name of the article was "In Thrust We Trust."
Oh yeah, that's right.
Good article.
Man.
All right, Tim. We've had Tim. I'm glad you're my friend. That's all I can say.
I appreciate it. Same with you, Greg. You've been really good to me, and
I'm getting a notice that my internet connection's up in here.
so are the guests.
Yes, they're probably getting tired of us by now.
Yeah. Well, split it up, man. Record it with your phone or something. I don't know. All right, man. Well, take care. I really enjoyed it.
Well, Tim, I really appreciate it. Appreciate everything you've done. Appreciate you as a friend. Let's do this some more.
I'm in, man. Just give me a call.
All right. Take
This
care.
is something good to do during COVID. Let's talk.